Look, honey, I got you a new pet. Uh-oh. All right, so finally, the beast is out. Got it on the engine stand. Took me a better part of a day to do that. Shouldn't have. It should have been about 10, 15 minutes. But the problem was well, I'll show you. Come check this out. So typically mounting an engine on an engine stand is a pretty simple task. You just want to be careful that you don't drop it on your foot or everything's tight and the bolts are right. Well, these are metric bolts. And for some reason, when I mounted the engine from the Saturn on the stand, they're the same size bolts, but for some reason they were loose in here, so I had to go up to Tractor Supply and get some metrics. And man, metrics, they act like they're made out of gold. The standard bolts, they're easy enough to come by. They're cheap. But if you look down in here, I don't know, let me see if I can figure out how to turn on the light. There we go. This is a dowel that your transmission slides onto, and there's another one here. Well, this one is just a hole. It goes nowhere. There's no threads. This one is actually threaded, and this is, I have to have bottoms and tops bolted on so I can flip the motor over and work on the oil pan and crank and bearings and all that. But when I came across this dowel, typically, this is the first time I've ever had the dowel actually in the only bolt hole that I could bolt the engine stand to it. And it's threaded on the backside. Well, I couldn't find a bolt that would thread into it and was long enough to cover this distance and get into the threads back here. So I ended up getting a smaller bolt using the standard, and it actually threads into those threads, but it's loose. And I thought about pulling the dowel out because I have to have this flush to the back of the engine. It's tight to the dowel now, but then that gave me space here, and I don't have any dowels up here. So it would have been cattywampus a little bit, and I didn't want that, so I ended up sizing it up, and it ends up being 3 washers thick. So long story short, it took me the better part of a day because I had to keep running back and forth to the store to get the hardware that I needed to get this thing to mount up flat and tight. So now I'm pretty confident that it's not going to fall off of there. It's tight and it's good to go. And then the first thing I'm going to do, it's teardown day. I'm going to tear all this stuff off of here, and first thing I'm going to do is address this nightmare. And since I cut so far into that bolt, but I couldn't get any more with the grinder, this one I might try and see if I can come out with it. This one, there's nothing left, so I'm going to end up having to just cut it off. I'll probably end up having to cut this one off, and then when I get this off, I should have a couple of studs here that I can thread out. Then I can replace this for a lot of money and put new studs in here. We'll see. Hopefully that's how it's going to work out. I'm not going to pull the exhaust manifolds off because there's no need to. I am going to take off the valve covers. Get the valve covers off, I have to take all this off the front, which is fine. I'm going to pull it all off so I can clean it up nice and get all this goo off of here. It looks like 10 millimeter bolts on the valve covers. I'm going to clean this as best I can before I pull the valve covers and before I pull the injectors out, because I don't want all this junk falling down. Look, I even got a leaf in here. I don't want all this junk falling down in there. So that's where we're at. It's just going to be tear down, and I'll flip it over and pull the oil pan. I might pull the oil pan while it's there so I don't let the oil run up through the engine when I flip it over. I got most of the, I drained the oil, but there's still some residuals in there. I'll pull the supercharger off, and then I got to wait for gaskets to show up. So that's how that's. But this thing was so tight. Look how I bent this wrench. And there's to get more leverage on a wrench, I'll do it a couple of ways. If I can get that on there and get this one on there, I can lock them in. Let's see how I do it. Like that. And they lock together nice and tight, and you can really get some leverage on that thing. But the last time I did it, let's see if we can. Yeah, we're pretty good. And that's so boogered up that this ain't going to hold on to it, I'm sure. Hey, look at that. That one actually came off. I bet I don't get that luxury with the other one because there's nothing left. Wow. Nice. Why couldn't you do that before I had to cut you apart? All right, so since that came off, that's nice. But since I tore these apart so bad, that's not nice. I need to try and get these out so that I can put new studs in when I put it back together. And that's probably not good. So to get these out, I'm going to soak them down with old good stuff. I'll get to the back for sure. I'm going to let that sit for a while, and I might end up hitting this with some heat. Remember that heat causes it to expand, so if I don't heat this, but I do heat this, this will open up a little bit and make it easier to get these out. I also have plan B, which is this guy. And what this does is grabs a hold of that stud, and you tighten it up here, and hold this and tighten it, and then you use this one to turn it loose. I've used this thing, you get it from, let's see what it is, Autocraft. AutoZone has it, and I paid like 20 bucks for it, and it's worth its weight in gold. I've used this thing a ton of times on the Camaro, getting old busted off studs. I mean, even if it's just a little bit, these jaws really grab a hold of it, and they don't let go. It's actually a reverse thread in here, so the tighter you turn this to loosen it, the tighter it makes this on the stud that it's holding on to. So I might give that a shot right now. And so this is a 24 millimeter, and I might be wrong in doing this. I might be better off just trying to torque it, but I'm going to go ahead and hit it with this for a second and see what happens. First, I got to get it in the socket. There we go. She's out. Same thing, get her up as tight as you can on there. Turn it lefty-loosey. That tightens this up. Let's see if I can do it with the wrench. Those jaws are really biting into that thing. There it goes. Now I'll get that stud out of there. And we're golden. And I can just... So I'm going to make this easier on myself. Alright, so I'm not removing the power steering pump. I was told it was new, relatively new. But in case you have to, 13 millimeter. And that should be it, as far as I know. I don't see anything else. If it's on the car, it's going to be a little trickier, but just keep in mind you need to go through these holes to get to a 13 millimeter bolt on each, one on top, one on bottom. That thing should come off. I do have to remove this, which has the tensioner on it, and it has 3 15s, and these, a lot of them come with, these are just basically water tubes for coolant. These, I'm kind of lucky, I think, that these are metal, because a lot of them are plastic and they break and leak. So hopefully, I think I'm going to pull those bolts and then take this guy off of there that way, and hopefully this comes off with it, and then I just have to put it back together that way. Either way, because I'm taking intake and supercharger off, so I have to get those off. It's obviously then water goes through, and water pump, I don't know, that's kind of a goofy thing, but yeah, this water pump, I'm going to pump it here, and it's going to end up going in through there and here. I don't think I'm taking the water pump off, and the only reason I'm taking this off is because it's locked in here anyhow, and I have to remove this to get this valve cover off, or I could get the grinder out. Everything's in the way. So there should be an O-ring here, and it looks like it's just sealant. No good. This one has an O-ring in it, maybe. So a couple of O-rings seem to be the case there. This is the stuff nightmares are made of. It likes to break. Good, there's one. Didn't break. Pull it up. And another one didn't break. Good. Throw that up over there out of the way. All right, so I'm gonna pull the supercharger. I'm gonna pull the fuel rails, and I'm gonna try to leave the injectors in and just pull the rails off of the injectors, because all that stuff down there, I don't want falling down in these holes. It'll be a lot easier to clean this up if I can leave these in and take this off. These will block off the holes for me till I get this off, all this nightmare cleaned up out of here. So on the top, I've got what looks like a plastic 13 millimeter. Don't mind the bags. I put the bags on. Anytime I pull a fuel line, I just close it off of the bag in a zip tie, so I'm not getting them fumes rolling in the garage and exploding. But these are just, I'm going to get fumes in here in a minute once I take these out of the injectors, because these lines are probably all full. No biggie. This one apparently has a plastic nut for no good reason on top of, oh, I don't have a deep ball in my hand, but I do have the ability to do that. Let's see how that works out for me. I found if the nut's not too tight, you can just kind of drop that socket down on top of there. We'll see. Yep, there we go. If it's something that's real tight and you're struggling to get it loose, don't do that. But that should be cake right there. Oh, look at that. Now the whole thing wants to come out. Might as well take it around. And I'm not super sure, but it looks like I can, let's see. Maybe I can push that to unlock it. Yep, there goes one. Let's see. Just give her a little push. Loose. Save those, you're going to need them again. And the same thing on this side. Just going to push that back. Maybe get a hold of it back here and pull it. Look at that. Stuck with the screwdriver. Beautiful thing. Maybe I can get it back here and just pull it off. Look at that. I'm learning as I go. If you can get down in there. There it is. Alright, so we got these guys off. And we should be able to, I'm going to check and make sure everything's loose here. If everything's loose up here, this should all start to come up off of there. Now, I really don't even need to pull these injectors for any reason. Might as well just leave them in there. Then keeps me from having to replace those O-rings. Because if you don't mess with it, it's probably still good. Look what I got down here. Oop, there it goes. And I'm gonna be careful because I don't want to pull the injectors out. I just want to pull this off of the injectors. We're probably not going to be able to do that, right? So here's the injectors that did come out. Where's the other one? I know I got it. There we go. Yuck. Disgusting. But I'm just going to clean up the hole that they came out of and just kind of stick them back in there just to keep them from all that goop from falling down in there. So here's the two injectors that decided to stay and cooperate. And this is old rubble. And see, I don't want all that down in there on top of my valves. And here's the other two compliant injectors, and then we got this one. This one's not too bad. I think I can get that injector back in just to hang on to keep that gunk from getting down in there. We're gonna see. I'll push this one down in there without putting dirt in. Maybe. All right, that one's good. This one I gotta pull some stuff out of the way first. And I couldn't find the best way to do it, so I'm going to do it the wrong way. So I went through and pulled all the supercharger bolts, and there was a bracket on here that came off, and then all of these guys over here, I left these nuts off, which these nuts, not those nuts. So I left those off even though they're not in the way. And I've got loosageness here, but nothing back here will move. This is not something I want to break, so what I did was just went through and double checked everything with my glasses on and a super light and everything else, and I started looking, and I got this one off, but got one here. So yeah, pulled that guy out, and now we've got loosageness all the way around. There it goes. That was kind of hidden under a bracket and everything, so, and there wasn't really one corresponding on this side. It was down here, so just if you're ever doing this, watch out for that one. Don't get in there and turn into a gorilla. Just start ripping things apart thinking that it's stuck. Chances are it's not stuck. It's still bolted down. Don't break it. Don't break it. Surprisingly heavy. It's looking more and more like an old school 231 motor. Basically, that's all it is, old 231. We're down to the intake manifold now. Look down in there. Wow. So, cleaning all this up in here. I was looking for that, and it was not on there when I started this project, so it's been laying down under for a while. Is the clip that goes on in the fuel line.